Oh, she's a natural in this, you see. Her family in Italy has, from the 13th century, been in design and architecture. So it's in her genes. She's just got to do it. There's no other choice. She is destined to do something like this. So, with that, I believe that she will entertain you and inform you. And we will all have lots of fun with this. So, thank you, Lucretia.
Thank you.
Moroni.
Well, thanks for having me here. It's been a big challenge. I didn't expect this to happen so soon in my life as a photographer, because I really picked up photography only, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago. I always photographed in the family, but because I was a painter, mostly I couldn't really photograph. I had to draw more and photograph. That was what my master would encourage. He would say, if you photograph, you lose your eye to draw. So I abandoned my camera when I was 22 and left it on the storage. And then I picked it back up when the kids were born and slowly became the photographer of the family. And then I got into it seriously. And 5 years ago, when the decorative work went to a downside, I picked up the camera again and decided to go back studying. And I enrolled at ICP. And I started with black and white, which I'd never done. And then from black and white, darkroom, and all the chemistry, all the stuff, you know. And then immediately after, I met Tricia Rosenkild at ICP, which became my guru teacher. And after one class of alternative process, I started TAing for her. And immediately in between the first class, I said, you know, I don't want to print on paper. I come from a strange decorative background. I have been printing of any kind of surfaces. I've used silk screen from the first day. I was in decorative art, and I learned how to make acetates to speed up my silk screen printing process. So I actually use photography in my decorative work without really knowing about it in the 80s. The reason I'm showing you this work is this is one of my first work that sort of made me famous in New York in the decorative world. It is a decorative painted floor on hardwood, and it's a copy of a Persian rug, and it is printed with silk screening directly on the floor and then hand painted over. That's a detail of. I'm only going to show you 10 works to show you how I came to what I'm doing now, so that you understand the process. So that you can see a little bit of the texture that is actually printed with silk screening, and then the rest is hand painted. The next project I'm going to show you, it's actually a public project I did for Central Park with the Central Park Conservancy and the landmark. It was painting 24 murals under the Bethesda Arcade. I'm only showing you a few slides. And in this case, the reason I'm showing it to you is because I used marble, Botticino marble, as a surface. So the proportion is huge. So this is granite, and this is marble painted in full marble, which is weird. Yeah. So at this point, I already was known to do weird combination of materials and surfaces. And we also used some very toxic, super toxic materials. We used the MSA varnish to do a graffiti-proof surface. And to be honest, we never had graffiti, even though it's a public open space. We had overt problems because the installation was not done correctly. I really had huge fights with the city about this because they didn't insulate the panels right, so they're basically in really terrible shape. And this project I finished in '92. However, nobody knows I did it because I was not allowed to sign it, because there is conservancy that didn't want me to put a label saying I did it. So, if you do a grand tour of Central Park, you may find out it was done by me. If not, people think it's been there 100 years. So, take it from there. Okay, now we go to a few projects done on glass. This is a lace imitation, and it was silk screened from the back of a glass before it was mirrored. And here we're starting to go into my silver and gold passion. So it's a little bit like a Glomizet glass, but it's a little bit more contemporary. And you can see the details. So the lace is an antique lace that I photographed and then made the negative and shoot the screen and printed with an extremely toxic material. So I survived up to today toxic stuff, but I guess that's why I'm now in the alternative process, because I'm really sick of toxic stuff. In order to have the glass cleaned and mirrored, you need to use epoxy bicomponent materials, and otherwise when you silver it, it comes off. So that's why I had to use this horrible stuff. And now we're going to, I think, my most beautiful project in terms of glass painting. And this was the first time I actually used non-toxic material. However, I paid a big price for it. This is part of a big loft renovation, and we created a room within the room with sliding doors, and the doors are double thickness, and the pattern is printed 2 colors on one side and 2 colors on the other side, which makes it extraordinarily interesting when you look at it against the light. Obviously, this should have been printed in oil-based material, and I didn't want to be intoxicated, so we studied the varnish with a golden artist colors, which are sort of my gurus for any scientific problems or any materials problems. That was water-based, which was wonderful to hear and wonderful to test, but then when we did the real work, it was a nightmare, because each time we would put the screen down to print the second color, we would have little lines and the color would pull up because it was sticky. But we finished the project. This is, I think, the last work on glass. It's easier, it's done on the surface, it's not behind the glass. But it's very effective, and as you can see, the idea was to frame the view that you had from this bathroom of the skyscrapers in New York, and we did that. So this is basically my few slides on my background that are regarding glass, mirror, and silver. So we're first going to start from how do I prepare my surfaces. And we were thinking to do a tiny demonstration later. So basically I use, so far, mostly platine paper. If you looked at the table at the front room, you could see several papers I used, and those were the first attempt, and I'll talk more about it when I show the slides of those. At this point, I use either Bristol or platine because I need to have the most smooth, non-shrinkable paper. So I don't know how much you're familiar with gold leaf preparation, but you're supposed to prepare it with a bolo, which is like a plastery tinted gesso thing. And I came up with a mixture of that. So this is me preparing the papers, and this is already the goop that you put down. And this goop has to be put down at least 3 times. And each time you sand in between. You see me sanding. You see, with water sanding sponge. And you just do it again and again till it's completely unabsorbent and sleep. At this point, I'm ready to glaze with a sizing for gold. I tried the original oil-based Le Franc Bourgeois, and the result was magnificent, but the gold was too shiny and it was impossible to get the print over. And it was too strong gold. The same exact gold leaf reacted completely different on a water-based sizing or on a oil-based sizing. When I do gold leaf for clients on frames, I always use the 3 hours to 6 hours oil-based Le Franc and Bourgeois and have no problems. And then you polish the gold and you can make it look gold, and whatever the client wants, you take it from there. In this case, and I can show you later how horrible to me it looks, the real gold on the oil-based sizing, I opted to stay with the water-based. So the water-based has some good and bad sides to it. It is not as smooth as the oil, so it doesn't set down, and it's been really difficult to figure out which brush to use to apply it, and any teeny grain of goop will show through the gold, so you have to be really careful when you apply this thing. So I have selected a number of brushes and finally got it to the point I like. So here I'm starting to gold leaf individual pieces. Yes.
Is goop a technical term?
No, it's. I didn't bring the bottle because it was too big, but it's either a Rolco sizing or any water-based sizing would do. I can give you names later, and I'll show you how it looks if we do the demo. It's just like a white. This is exactly the steps, that you're seeing. The prints you saw outside are basically 1.5 leaf, and a lot of people think it's very expensive. It's actually not that expensive. It's just time-consuming. The product is maybe $60 for a package of gold and $60 for a package of Palladium leaf too. So here we're ready. They're set, and the next day they're set and brushed and polished. I use the Knox gelatin, and I gelatin at least 4 times each piece. So basically here you see the gelatin. And it's important to not do the gelatin too close to when you're going to expose the print. You need at least a couple of days of rest for the gelatin to sit. When I pushed it and I said, oh, what the hell, I'm going to gelatin this morning and go in the darkroom at night, disaster. The gelatin melts and the negative is ruined and the print is horror. So you need to prepare at least 2 days ahead of time. So I'm preparing the big ones that you saw. Again, the same kind of background. Then you prepare the leaves are generally 8 centimeters by 8.5, depending on the kind of gold you buy. I've done 22 carats, most of it, and different thickness. And the reason I tried different thickness is because when I do the wash, the last half an hour wash, I noticed some gold bubbles, so I freaked out, and so I decided to try different gold. So here I'm preparing the paper, and here I'm half done. And here I'm gonna wait, a couple of hours to start the next round. So basically this is for emergency, because I buy patent gold, so it's easier to apply. But when I do the touch-ups, I use this. I save every little bit and pick it up with this. So this is 3 3/8 by 3 3/8 inches, 25 leaves, patent palladium leaf. You know, it doesn't say the thickness. I know that the crocodile brand, it's thicker, and I do have samples. But in terms of differences on the final print, it doesn't really show. I will give you that information. I just have to look at it in an invoice, and it would say exactly the thickness. So in terms of surfaces, we should speak about that. I tried, before I knew it was working, the gelatin system, I tried aluminum leaf, which is very thick. And you must have seen some samples out there. And then when I saw that it was working, I said, okay, next is going to be either imitation gold or gold. Imitation gold was a complete disaster. I don't recommend it at all, because imitation gold oxidizes when you put it in the developer, and it's not worth the time. I have one sample that a student of mine did with a butterfly that was successful. So basically when you do the imitation gold, which is similar to the aluminum leaf, you spend no money and you just do it, but then you have to put a special medium to seal it. And then you do the same with gelatin again, and then you expose it and all that. But you're not sure that it's not going to oxidize. So I would not recommend imitation gold ever again. So then I moved to real gold, and it was a pleasure, because it's 2 steps less and it never oxidizes unless you burn the print, which we'll see. Sometimes I kept it in the heat too long. And then palladium print. Palladium leaf for me is my favorite. Never had a problem. It's beautiful, it's elegant, it's my favorite palladium. In terms of paper, I have tried rice paper, because I love rice paper, and of course it was a nightmare. And then I moved into a Canson tracing paper, architectural paper, which takes water very well, doesn't deform, and I have samples of that. And then I tried canvas, and then I tried heavier papers, Bristol, and then I said, okay, platine is it for now. It's platine most of the time. But I'm going back to rice paper, because I had a couple of collectors that really, really loved the idea of the silver, the leaf floating in something so delicate like the rice paper. And the rice paper to me meant my link to the Japanese, Chinese culture and art, which is one of my big passion, and the screens and all of that. So the reason I tried first, actually it was really the first time I had a successful print was on rice paper, was because of that. Okay, this really weird print on canvas is actually my first success of aluminium and cyanotype. So we were very excited it worked, even though it's sort of falling apart. But it's actually very meaningful, because this is a picture of my house in Italy, which is a 500 years old house. And I started from this negative because it was an easy negative. It was from an old picture I found at home that my dad did. And I decided to try on that because I was preparing a project for an ICP, long-term body of work, and we wanted to show our house. So I used that negative in different papers. This is on rice paper, and here we're starting to make some more sense. This is already on Canson tracing paper, so you see it's flat. So the difference is really the background. It's not wavy and crackling, and so the negative is much happier down. And this is, so this was aluminium still, and this is palladium leaf. So at this point I was really happy. The system with the gelatin and exposure and all of that was working. It didn't matter if the print wasn't right yet. And the next thing I started to do was pick up some of my own pictures, negatives. And this was the first nice one. I happen to love also the cracking that happens, that you cannot control, but some people think it's a default. I think it's, it's beauty. So this is a macro picture of a flower in Central Park. And then now we go to the trees. I only wanted to show you one negative. I'm not a good negative person, and I'm learning curves still as we go. But it's just to show you, and I'm sure you know much better than me, all the steps we went through with a friend of mine to get to the negative I used for the pictures you saw. This was the first regular print on paper, and this was the absolutely first platinum on platinum print, and the background is rice paper. So I have to say that unfortunately silver and gold and this kind of surfaces photograph really, really badly because of the problem with the light. So you almost see nothing, but actually the image is there. And this was the first of a little tree. This is very small. This is like 3 inches by 3 inches. And I framed it. I did something terrible. I took this frame at home. There was my great-grandfather pictures in it, probably a daguerreotype. Took him out, put him in a box, and put my print in. And nobody knows because I don't care. And I had a couple, I had him and his wife. So his wife's frame has been gone to a friend that has the matching pair of his print, and we're all very happy. And eventually, at some point, the daguerreotypes are going to go back in the frame. And the idea was to show it as an objet d'art, as a full thing, not just print. And this is a close-up of a second print of the same size. Most of the time, I have very few where I used some platinum. I unfortunately don't have a picture of the platinum ones. I didn't like so much how the platinum was reacting to the gold. It was too dark, so I kept going with the palladium. And then when I started to think, oh, I should try platinum again, I lost the bottle somewhere, safe in my studio. So Melody, I'm gonna have to order some platinum. I can't find it anymore. So this is version, actually this is the one that you guys got. Who got my print? Okay, so this is yours. I recognize it because it's a double exposure. So one thing we haven't talked about is these stupid things, these prints. Up to a point, like the first round, they had 24 to 26, 28 minutes exposure, and it was a semi-what, how do you say it, where's Melody? I don't know how you can categorize the different negatives. You have different right, so I'm in the second down with this print. Semi-what contrasty, semi-what flat. Okay, so that's what I have for these. However, for some reason, after a successful first 2 months of exposing once and coming out done, lately I've had to re-expose, and the exposure became 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours. So I did a system of, see, this is nice, 16 minutes, no big deal. And this one was 1 hour and 15 minutes the first round, and then 2 hours the second round, which means that I have to make sure I put the negative back exactly at the same place. So I have little holes in the negatives and a system to put it back in the right place. But it doesn't happen all the time. So in this case, it didn't happen. As you can see, there is a double exposure, which I don't mind because it looks like the wind is coming. So they're unique, you know, there's not one exactly the same as the other. So here is how it shows after an hour. You have a ghost. And then this is the next round. The same exact negative, the same exact print. And I probably should have left it 15 minutes less, but it's still really hard, the timing. You know, I have it all written down and it's still not scientifically working. We get there. But you see, this is first round, and for some reason it didn't pick up here. But then I touch them up, or I do a second round, and they're, you know, I don't throw them away. I threw them away only the test because it's a nightmare. So this one was the burned one. I wanted to show it to you because I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to do 2 hours. I'm sick of doing 1 hour and 45 minutes, 1 hour and 15 minutes because nothing is showing, it's nothing showing. So this is actually one that I would love to have examined by a chemist to understand exactly what happened, because I think the gold tarnished because of the heat. So I would be very interested in lending this piece to someone to test what happened to palladium, because it's very different. See, here there is a little bit of that, but not to this extreme. And this is the first one of a new series, which had a lot of problems with the negative, but we're getting there. It's an olive tree. And this brings me to talking a little bit more about how you photograph when you are thinking, I'm going to print on gold. As you see in all of this, we don't really have much sky or clouds. We are pretty clean. So I sort of learned when I photograph, and I actually use a Rolleiflex to all of his pictures, that I don't need any background. The simpler sky, the best, and the less work in workshop, the best. And so I will show you a couple of prints that are too busy, and you'll understand what I mean in terms of going out to shoot with having in mind a gold print and not a regular palladium. So this guy is very thin, and maybe olive trees are not the right thing for gold because the leaves are too small, but I really love this tree, so I'm still working on the negative to get it to a point that I can have it. It looks beautiful on a regular palladium print. I have it out, so it's just on the gold that is giving me a hard time. Okay, here we go to the first, what you're not supposed to do, print. So this is a series of sunflowers. This is the good one, and this is the same exact photographed, but worked on Photoshop. So basically, I picked an area and enlarged it and cleaned up the background. But I wanted to show you this as it is, because this looks amazing as a palladium print on regular paper. It's a perfect negative. But on gold is a mess. because there is too much information. The gold doesn't take too much information. So this is how we cleaned it up and edged it. And again, some are perfect, like this is more perfect than the other, because you can really see all the details of the sunflower. And some have crackling that I think looks really great. And some don't. This is palladium leaf and it doesn't crack as much as the gold. I don't know why. This is the same series and it's a little bit burned, but I still like it. It's like an antique piece. Same one on palladium, it's much cleaner. It has a little crack, but it's fine. This is a negative I'm still working on because it's not yet there. It was too contrasty, but I really like it. This is my last print that is to show you that this beautiful print, I tried on gold and it was complete disaster because it's too rich. But if you look at it, even in large on a regular paper, it works. So if you're interested in pursuing the silver gold printing, you need to really look at the negatives in a completely different way. And you start learning how to shoot at a certain time of the day, with a certain landscape, with only sky, with only grass, not too much going on.